Hey guys, if you don't know me, I'm Emma Mitchell, and I graduated from high school last year, and now I go to Westmont College. Kind of, it's now in my living room. But Trent asked me if I could come talk to you guys about 3 truths that have been grounding me in this hard and scary time. And so that's what I'm going to try to do. And at the end, I have a couple worship songs to share because I just can't help but share them. The first thing I want to share is that it's okay if you need to grieve and really be disappointed and maybe cry about all the things that have happened. I certainly feel some grief for all the things that got canceled for me at school, especially not being able to lay in the warm sun at the beach anymore. And I especially want to say this to you guys who are seniors. You guys had a lot of things planned that you've been planning on for years that now you can't do, and it's okay if you're really sad and disappointed about that. God sees your disappointment and your sadness, and He's with you in that. Psalm 34:18 says that God is near to the brokenhearted. And it doesn't say only to those who are brokenhearted about things that are really serious or really terrible. Even though me not being able to go back to school is certainly not the worst thing that's happening in the world right now, it's okay that it is disappointing, and God is with me in those disappointments too. The most famous verse for teenagers to memorize is John 11:35, Jesus wept. And I think this is actually really important. He cried for the loss of his friend Lazarus, and then less than 10 verses later, he raised him from the dead. Jesus knew what he was about to do. He knew that it was going to be okay. But he still cried, and he still felt the emotions of the time and of the event. Jesus knows what it's like to feel emotions, and He's with you in any and all of your disappointments. It's okay if you need to put on some worship music, go for a walk, or just lay on your bed and cry for a while. He's with you in that. The next thing I want to encourage you with is to remember who God is. I know that when the news of this first started breaking, I was overwhelmed with anxiety and doubt. I definitely let myself spiral, so much so that my friends were threatening to take away my phone if I kept reading the news. All the things I heard and believed about God being sovereign and faithful seemed impossible in my internal freakout. One of the first days of this, I went to our Sunday night worship service at school, and I was fighting it the whole time. If you know me, you know that I love worship music, and this is not normally how I am during worship nights. But I was really struggling, and I was scared, and I was determined to figure out what was going on. And just as I knew He would, over the next several weeks, God has begun to speak to me and remind me of who He is, even when there's tragedy and fear in every headline and every article. God is faithful, and He is sovereign. Here on this side of heaven, we have absolutely no clue why these terrible things are happening, why graduations are canceled, why we have to stay home with our insane siblings for who knows how long, and why there's so much suffering in our world. But He does know, and He also promises to be with us and to hold on to us even then. The Bible over and over again describes God's steadfast love, His covenant faithfulness, and His promises to carry us. All the people in the Old Testament who wrote these verses had their fair share of suffering, fear, and trials, and they still believed. At school, people talk about the idea of borrowing the faith of others when you struggle to believe yourself. And I think this is what we can do in this time with these people in the Old Testament or the New Testament and people throughout history who have experienced intense suffering. If they still believed, we can too. I also encourage you to read the Psalms or any part of the Bible and just to look for how God has demonstrated that He is faithful. One of my favorite verses ever is Hebrews 10:23. Let us hold fast the confession of our hope without wavering, for He who promised is faithful. He is faithful. The same God who made a covenant with Abraham, parted the seas for the Israelites, and sent His own Son to die for you and for me, is with us and is holding on. We can trust Him to be faithful again. The last thing I want to say is to be looking for ways God is moving and opportunities He is giving you in this time. It's a very unique time, and I know I'm not alone in hoping this is the only time we ever experience something like this. But I know that I don't want to have been so lost in my disappointments and anxieties that I miss the work He is doing. A quote I saw recently says, "If you're still hanging on to the way things should be, you might miss the work God is doing in the way things are." That hit me hard when I first heard it. I was so lost in all the things I was missing. Our annual dorm musical competition that my dorm was definitely going to win. Not being able to play piano with my school orchestra. Not seeing my new friends that I loved for 6 months. And all these things. I had been ignoring any idea of the good that could come from this season. I know this is not an easy time for anyone right now, but Jesus is present in the hard times and he's working in us even now. I know for me, I have a lot of opportunities to learn how to be patient and show love to the other 7 people in my house, relying on his strength to not slam the door, to not lose it when my brother's screaming at the top of his lungs, looking at you, Sam, and to not let my stir craziness and sadness spill into my conversations with my family as irritation and disrespect. So far, I'm not doing super well at any of these things, but the opportunities are still there. I would encourage you to look around and to see how God may be at work and how you can be a part of that work, even in your house. Maybe helping your mom clean, volunteering to help with your siblings, reaching out to a friend who might be lonely, or anything else. Even in times of fear and suffering, God calls us to glorify him with our actions and to respond to the kindness he has shown us by giving it to others. One of my favorite words right now is steadfast. He is steadfast to us all the time, and James 1 calls us to be steadfast too. Steadfast in trial and steadfast in our trust in him. There is abundant grace for the moments when we fail to be steadfast, but he continually calls us to rely on him to be steadfast and to work with him to help others in this hard time. So those are my 3 things. Number 1, it's okay to grieve and to be sad and to cry. Number 2, God is faithful and he is good even when it's hard to see and to believe. And number 3, look for what God is doing and for ways for you to be a part of it, even if nothing looks like what we thought it would a few months ago. And now for my favorite part, song recommendations. The first one is Choose to Worship by Ren Collective. This one's off of their brand new album, and it's so good. If you find yourself struggling to worship or coming up for reasons why we should worship God in this time, this song will really help you with that. The next one is Steadfast by Sandra McCracken. It's all about how God is steadfast to us in trial. And the chorus will be stuck in your head for days, which isn't a bad thing when you're constantly being reminded of God's faithfulness. And the last one is Goodness of God by the Worship Initiative. We sing this song a lot at Westmont, and it is full of incredible reminders of God's goodness and the call to worship him and live in that goodness. I could keep listing songs for a long time, but I won't. Hopefully you guys have found some encouragement in this, and if you want more song recommendations, don't hesitate to reach out. God is faithful even in these uncertain times, and I pray that you can rest in that truth. Thank you.